"Sir, your new assistant brought his kids." "Kids?" "Triplets, sir. And they just reprogrammed your presentation slides to play Baby Shark." That was the first thing I heard when I stepped into his office. Not exactly the best first impression. Especially not when you're desperate for a job. And the CEO already looks like he eats chaos for breakfast and spits out rules for dessert. I froze at the door, clutching my 3 little monsters. Well, my triplets, by their tiny hands. 3 pairs of big brown eyes looked up at me, blinking innocently like they hadn't just hacked into the company's presentation system. I swear, they're angels when they sleep. But awake? Nightmares. Tiny, adorable nightmares. And right now, all 3 were humming Baby Shark in perfect harmony. The CEO's jaw tightened. His eyes lifted, cold and sharp, the kind of stare that could freeze a volcano. Mr. Adrian Gray, the youngest and most feared CEO in the city. And I, Ian Lee, was standing in front of him, holding my breath and praying he wouldn't fire me before I even started. "Mr. Lee," he said slowly, his voice deep enough to rattle my nerves. "Would you like to explain why my presentation for the investors just turned into a children's concert?" I wanted to melt into the floor. I'm so sorry, sir. They were curious. I told them not to touch anything but they did." He sighed long and sharp. Security almost called IT thinking we were under attack. My heart dropped. "Sir, please. I really need this job. I promise it won't happen again." Behind me, one of the triplets tugged my sleeve. "Daddy, is he mad?" The smallest one, Noah, peeked at the CEO with a shy smile. "He looks like Mr. Grumpy from your bedtime stories." Adrian blinked once, then twice. His lips twitched, almost like he was fighting the urge to laugh. He didn't, of course. He just turned back to his computer, stone-faced, and said, "Take your seat. And keep them contained." Contained. Like they were wild animals. Maybe he wasn't wrong. I sat down, trying to keep the kids busy with coloring books while I sorted through my tasks. Emails, schedules, reports. All neatly stacked, all terrifying. I'd only been hired yesterday. A last-minute replacement. My last job had let me go when they found out about my kids. Apparently, being a single Omega father wasn't professional enough for their image. So when this job came up, I begged for it. Even if it meant long hours, sleepless nights, and living on instant noodles. Adrian Gray's company, Gray Industries, was my last shot at stability. For me. And for them. "Mr. Lee," Adrian's voice snapped me back to reality. He stood by the window, tall, sharp in a black suit that probably cost more than my rent for a year. He didn't look real. More like someone sculpted from ice. "You listed assistant experience on your resume," he said, not looking at me. "Yes, sir. At a logistics firm. And yet your children can override a password-protected presentation?" I swallowed. "They're gifted." He turned to look at me. For a second, something softened in his eyes. Just a second. Then it was gone. He walked back to his desk, fingers brushing the edge of a document. "Gifted or not, they cannot interfere with work operations. You understand that?" "Yes, sir." Then he said something I didn't expect. "You may keep them here for today." I blinked. "Sir?" "Until you find someone to watch them. I don't want excuses for missed work." That was his version of mercy, I guess. Still, I bowed slightly, whispering, "Thank you." He didn't reply. But when Noah accidentally sneezed glitter onto his suit 10 minutes later, he only sighed and handed me a tissue. That was the moment I realized he wasn't heartless. He just didn't know what to do with warmth. Lunch hour came and went in a blur of spilled juice boxes, shredded papers, and one small meltdown over missing crayons. I caught glimpses of Adrian working quietly through it all, unbothered, calm, almost amused when he thought I wasn't looking. Sometimes, I'd catch his eyes flicking toward the kids. Watching. Softening. Like he didn't quite hate the noise. But I couldn't shake the guilt. This office wasn't a daycare. And I was walking a tightrope between gratitude and disaster. At 3 p.m., he called me into his office again. The kids were asleep in the corner on a blanket. "Mr. Lee," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. "You're coping well, considering." "I'm sorry for the mess," I said quickly. He raised an eyebrow. I didn't say it was a problem. That threw me off balance. "I thank you, sir." He leaned back, studying me. "How old are they?" 4. They turn 5 next month. "And their father?" The question hit like cold rain. I hesitated. "Gone. He left before they were born." Silence filled the room. Even the hum of the computer seemed distant. Adrian's expression changed, not pity, but something quieter. Something like understanding. Then he said softly, "You're doing well." And somehow, that meant more than I expected. The rest of the day was calm. Too calm. I should have known better. At 5:30, as I was packing up, one of the kids, Eli, discovered the intercom system. Before I could stop him, his tiny voice echoed through the entire building. "Attention everyone. Daddy says Mr. Gray is our new daddy now." My soul left my body. Every employee within a mile radius probably choked on their coffee. Adrian froze mid-step. The look on his face priceless. For 3 long seconds, neither of us breathed. Then, without a word, he pressed a button on his desk and calmly said into the mic, "Please disregard the previous announcement." He glanced at me. I wanted to evaporate. I'm so sorry, sir." He held up a hand. "Mr. Lee, go home before I reconsider your employment." His tone was sharp, but I could see it, the tiniest twitch at the corner of his mouth. He was holding back a smile. That night, as I tucked the kids into bed, my phone buzzed. A message. From him. "Your children left their crayons on my desk. Also tomorrow, try to come earlier. I might need help with something." My heart skipped. I read the message 3 times. Then again. It wasn't cold. It wasn't distant. It sounded like someone reaching out. I didn't know what he wanted or what help meant, but I knew one thing. For the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to tomorrow. The next morning, the office was quiet. Too quiet. When I entered, Adrian was already there. He didn't even look up when he said, "Close the door, Mr. Lee." Something in his tone made me nervous. I did as told. Then he looked at me and smiled just barely. "I think we need to renegotiate your position." My breath caught. "Am I fired?" He shook his head. "No. Promoted." I blinked. "Promoted?" He nodded. "You'll be my personal assistant. Effective today." I didn't know what to say. "Why me?" He didn't answer. He just handed me a stack of papers and said, "Because you survived yesterday." Then, for the first time since I met him, he laughed. A real laugh. Low, quiet, warm. And for some reason, it made my chest ache. But that warmth didn't last. Because as the day went on, I started to notice things. The way his eyes lingered when I smiled. The way his voice softened when he talked to the kids. The way he started caring. And I didn't know what scared me more. The idea that I was falling for my boss. Or the fact that he might be falling too. That night, as we stayed late to finish a report, he leaned close, too close. The air between us changed. His scent, faint and steady, wrapped around me. My pulse quickened. "Mr. Lee," he said quietly, his voice low. "Yes, sir?" He didn't answer right away. His eyes held mine, intense, unreadable. Then softly, "Call me Adrian." And before I could even process it, he walked out of the office, leaving me there, breathless, confused, and terrified of what was coming next. I couldn't sleep that night. His voice kept echoing in my head. "Call me Adrian." Simple words. But the way he said them, deep, quiet, and heavy with something I didn't understand. No boss says that to an assistant. Not like that. Not while standing close enough for me to feel his breath on my cheek. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I wanted to. Either way, I lay awake replaying it, wondering when Sir became Adrian in my thoughts. Morning came too soon. The triplets were extra wild, arguing over who got the blue socks. By the time we reached the office, I looked like I'd survived a tornado. Adrian was already there. He glanced up when I entered, his expression unreadable. Then, so casually it almost didn't sound real, he said, "Good morning, Ian." He remembered my name. He used it. And just like that, my heart forgot how to beat. "Gee, good morning, S.I., Adrian," I stammered. His lips curved just a little. "Better." Behind me, one of the triplets whispered, "Daddy, are we in trouble again?" Adrian's brow arched. "Not yet." The faintest smile touched his face, and my knees nearly gave out. The day started calm. Almost too calm. I handled his calls, arranged meetings, tried to look busy. But every time he spoke my name, my stomach flipped like it didn't get the memo that this was work. At lunch, he surprised me again. "I ordered food," he said. "For you and them." He pointed at the triplets, who were busy drawing stick figures of him. "Sir, Adrian, you didn't have to." He shrugged. "They'd steal mine anyway." That was fair. He had 3 plates brought in. Mini sandwiches, fruit, even juice boxes. Watching him hand them out carefully, like he'd done it before, did something strange to me. For the first time, he looked human. Warm. Maybe even lonely. After lunch, a sudden storm hit. Thunder, heavy rain, and a blackout that made the entire building go dark. The kids squealed. Eli clung to my leg. Noah started crying softly. I tried to calm them down, whispering, "It's okay, babies, it's just thunder." Then I felt it. A hand on my shoulder. Adrian's. Firm. Steady. He crouched beside us, voice low but gentle. "It's all right. The generators will come back soon." Noah sniffled. "I don't like thunder." Adrian hesitated, then took off his suit jacket and draped it around them. "Here," he said quietly. "Superhero cape. Works every time." The triplets giggled. The storm didn't sound so scary anymore. And me? I just stared, because I'd never seen that look on his face before, soft, patient, real. The light came back a few minutes later, but something in me had already changed. Later that evening, when the office emptied out, he stayed behind. So did I. The kids were asleep on the couch again, exhausted from their superhero mission. He stood by the window, watching the rain. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. "You said their father left before they were born." I nodded. "Yes." "Did he ever come back?" "No." He turned to face me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, almost to himself, "Coward." My throat tightened. Maybe he just wasn't ready. Adrian's gaze softened. "No one's ever ready. You just decide what's worth staying for." The way he said it, like he'd been there too. I wanted to ask what he meant, but before I could, his phone rang. He turned away, voice cold again. The warmth disappeared, locked behind his walls. I thought that was the end of it. But later that night, as we were leaving, someone was waiting at the elevator. A tall man in a tailored suit. Sharp smile. Cold eyes. "Adrian," he said. "Didn't expect to find you playing babysitter." Adrian's entire posture changed. Harder. Tighter. "Ethan," he said quietly. "You're early." I stood there awkwardly, holding my kids. The man's gaze slid to me, then to the triplets. "And who's this?" "New pet project." My stomach twisted. Adrian's jaw clenched. "He's my assistant." Ethan smirked. "And the kids?" Adrian didn't answer. For some reason, that silence burned more than the insult. Ethan chuckled, stepping closer. "I always wondered what it'd take to crack you, Gray. Maybe 3 little brats and a pretty face." That was when Adrian moved. Fast. He stepped between us, eyes like fire. "Leave," he said. No humor. No hesitation. Just a warning that made the air vibrate. Ethan raised his hands in mock surrender. "Touchy. We'll talk business later." Then he walked away, still smiling. I exhaled only when the elevator doors closed. Adrian turned to me. "Are you all right?" I nodded. "Who was that?" He didn't answer. Instead, he ran a hand through his hair, looking tired. "Forget him," he muttered. "He won't bother you again." But I knew better. Whoever that man was, he wasn't done. And the way Adrian looked, like old ghosts had just walked back into his life, scared me. That night, I found a small note slipped into the folder he'd given me earlier. Just one line, written in his sharp handwriting. I meant what I said. "You're doing well." I didn't know why, but it made me cry. Because no one had told me that in years. The next few days blurred into one another. Work, kids, laughter, exhaustion. Adrian became different. He smiled more. He brought snacks for the kids. Once, I caught him humming Baby Shark under his breath before he realized I was there. But beneath all that softness, I could feel something brewing. A tension neither of us wanted to name. His eyes lingered too long. My pulse quickened too easily. Every good morning felt like a confession we were too afraid to make. Then one evening, as we finished a late report, I noticed a picture on his desk. A woman. Beautiful. Smiling. He saw me looking. "She's gone," he said quietly. I looked away. "I'm sorry. She was my fiancée," he continued. "Car accident. 3 years ago." His voice cracked slightly. "She said I worked too much. That I'd end up alone." I didn't know what to say. So I just whispered, "You're not alone anymore." He looked at me then, really looked. And something unspoken passed between us. Warm. Dangerous. Real. I should have left right then. But I didn't. Because when he reached out, hesitant, almost trembling, and brushed a stray hair from my face, I couldn't move. "Ian," he whispered. My heart stopped. Everything inside me screamed that this was wrong. He was my boss. My stability. My only chance at holding my life together. But his touch burned through every reason I had. He leaned closer. And then, a knock on the door shattered the moment. We both froze. It was the receptionist. "Sir, Mr. Ethan is here again." He said it's urgent. Adrian's eyes darkened. He stood back straight, mask slipping back on. "Send him in." When Ethan entered, the tension in the air could have cut glass. "I told you to stay out of my company," Adrian said coldly. Ethan smirked. "Relax, brother. I just came to say hello." "Brother." The word hit me like a slap. I stared between them. Same sharp jawlines. Same storm gray eyes. "Of course." Adrian's voice was tight. "This isn't the time." Ethan's smile widened. "On the contrary, I think it's the perfect time to meet your little family." He looked straight at me, then at the sleeping triplets on the couch. My stomach dropped. Whatever history they shared, it was about to drag us into something far worse than office gossip. I didn't sleep that night. Adrian's message, "Don't come to work tomorrow. It's not safe," burned in my mind until sunrise. What wasn't safe? What did Ethan want? And why did my chest ache like I'd already lost something I never even had? I told myself to listen, to stay home, keep the kids close. But I couldn't. I couldn't sit there, wondering if he was okay. So the next morning, I packed the triplets' breakfast, took a deep breath, and went to the office. The lobby was different. Guards everywhere. Phones ringing off the hook. Something had happened. When I reached Adrian's floor, his assistant tried to stop me. "Mr. Lee, you're not supposed to be here." But then the door opened, and Adrian stepped out. He looked exhausted. Tie loose. Eyes dark. Still impossibly composed, but I could see it. He hadn't slept either. "I told you to stay home," he said quietly. "I couldn't." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Ethan's been trying to take over the company," he said finally. "He's been leaking documents, blackmailing board members. And now," he trailed off. "Now what?" I asked. He looked at me. "He's after you." My breath caught. "Me? Why?" "Because he thinks you're my weakness." Silence. For a moment, the world just stopped. The hum of the lights. The faint sound of the rain outside. All gone. My weakness. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to feel. I just knew that if I took another step closer to him, there'd be no turning back. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Security everywhere. Meetings, calls, tension thick enough to choke on. The kids could feel it too. They stayed quiet, drawing in the corner. Every time Adrian passed by, he'd glance at them, like he was reminding himself what he was fighting for. At one point, I caught him kneeling beside Noah, who was coloring a picture of Mr. Gray, with a cape and a crown. Adrian smiled softly. "A cape?" Noah nodded. "Because you saved Daddy." Adrian's smile faded. He looked at me then, something unreadable in his eyes, before standing abruptly and walking away. I wanted to chase after him, but I didn't, because part of me knew he needed to fight his battle first. It was almost evening when everything went wrong. A crash echoed from the hallway. Shouting. Then gunfire. The triplets screamed. I grabbed them, heart racing. Before I could move, Adrian burst into the room. "Get down," he shouted, pulling me behind his desk. The sound of footsteps grew louder. Then Ethan's voice, smooth, cold, terrifying. "Always so dramatic, brother." Adrian stood slowly, keeping me and the kids shielded. "You don't have to do this," he said. "Oh, but I do," Ethan sneered. "You took everything from me. The company. The name. The life I deserved." Adrian's voice dropped. "You did that yourself." "Maybe," Ethan said. "But now, I'll take what's yours." His gaze flicked to me. And in that second, I knew. He didn't mean the company. He meant me. Everything happened fast. Ethan moved forward. Adrian stepped in front of me. The gun went off. The sound ripped through the air. The kids screamed. When I opened my eyes, Adrian was on the floor, blood spreading across his shirt. I froze. No, Adrian." He was breathing barely. "Stay back," he gasped. I turned toward Ethan, shaking, anger and fear flooding me. "How could you?" He smiled. "He took what was mine. I just returned the favor." Before he could fire again, security burst in. They tackled him, shouting, chaos everywhere. I didn't hear any of it. All I could hear was Adrian's ragged breathing. I pressed my hands against his wound, crying, "Hold on, please, don't you dare leave me." He looked up at me, pale but still him. "Ian, don't talk. Just stay still." He reached up weakly, touching my cheek. "Promise me," he whispered. "What?" "Take care of them." Tears blurred my vision. "You'll do it yourself." His lips curved faintly. "You're impossible." Then his eyes fluttered shut. The next hours were chaos. Ambulance. Hospital. Lights. Everything smelled like fear. He went into surgery. I waited outside, clutching the kids, praying harder than I ever had in my life. At some point, Noah crawled into my lap. "Daddy," he whispered. "Is Mr. Gray gonna be okay?" I swallowed hard. "Yes," I said, forcing a smile. He promised. He made it. When the doctor came out, I almost collapsed. "The bullet missed his heart," she said. "He's lucky." Lucky. That word had never sounded so sacred. When I was finally allowed to see him, he was asleep, pale but breathing steady. I sat beside his bed and held his hand. For a long time, I just watched him. The lines of his face. The calm in his expression. The storm finally quiet. And then, I whispered what I'd been too afraid to say before. "I love you." He woke up 2 days later. The first thing he said was, "You disobeyed my message." I laughed, even through the tears. "You're welcome." He smiled weakly. "You always ruin my plans." "Only the bad ones," I said. The kids burst into the room right then, yelling, "Daddy, he's awake." Adrian looked at them, then at me. And for once, he didn't hide his smile. "Come here," he said softly. They climbed onto the bed, careful, curious. He let them, even pulled them close. And when Eli asked, "Does this mean you're our new daddy now?" Adrian didn't flinch. He looked straight at me and said, "If your daddy agrees, maybe." My breath caught. The world stopped again. But this time, it didn't hurt. Weeks passed. Ethan was arrested. The company stabilized. And somehow we all fell into a rhythm that didn't feel like survival anymore. Adrian would visit us every morning. Sometimes with breakfast. Sometimes just with a smile that said more than words ever could. He still worked too much. Still scolded me for misplacing files. Still pretended he didn't like chaos. But every evening, he'd stop by the kids' corner, sit down, and listen to their stories. And sometimes, he'd catch my hand when no one was looking. One night, after a long day, he showed up at our apartment. No warning. Just him, standing there with his suit jacket off, holding a bag of takeout and a tired smile. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "Thought I'd check if my assistant was feeding my future children properly." I laughed. "You're unbelievable." He stepped closer. "So are you." He set the food down, looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "I meant what I said that night. You were never a weakness." I blinked. "You were the first thing that made me feel strong again." And then he kissed me. Soft. Careful. Like he was touching something fragile, but worth everything. The world outside could have ended right then, and I wouldn't have cared. The triplets cheered from the couch. "Daddy's blushing." Adrian groaned. "Remind me why I allow witnesses?" I laughed until I cried. He kissed me again anyway. And for the first time since I could remember, life didn't feel like a disaster waiting to happen. It felt like home. Sometimes, when I watch him helping the kids with their drawings, I think back to that first day. The spilled coffee, the chaos, the cold man who couldn't smile. And I realized something. They didn't just change his office. They changed his world. And maybe so did I. "Sir, your new assistant brought his kids." "Kids?" "Triplets, sir." "Let them in."